Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to A Slice of Time. I am your presenter, Nate Maxon here, and as always, this week we will go back, as we do on this show, 25 years ago in professional wrestling, to talk about all the news, notes, results, and happenings in the business 25 years ago. Fun journey, especially for us fans of 90s wrestling, because right now, of course, 25 years ago is the year 1997, and I actually have a special guest co-host this week to join me. He is the host of If You Smell What the Arch is Cooking right here on the WrestleNet Radio Podcast Network, Mr. Archie Mitchell.
It's good to be back, Nate. I know it's been like at least over a month since I've been on, if not longer. Great to talk about stuff that is not modern product.
Yeah, well, and that is Archie's show. So if you are a modern product wrestling fan that listens to the shows here on the network and you haven't checked out his show, I highly recommend it. Each and every week, it usually drops on Sunday or Monday, and Archie is the best of us because he's the most consistent. So,
no, I've missed quite a few weeks, but it's not even the point of that. There's just some weeks that I look at what the product is, Nate, and I'm like, I can't report on this. It's just too bad. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. Geesh. Geesh is the great word for it. Geesh.
Yeah.
Welcome to Monday Night Raw. I'm Jimmy Smith. Geesh.
Yeah. And I'm Corey Graves, married to Carmella.
Yeah, geesh.
Lucky bastard.
Well, just so you know, because again, like you said, you haven't been on the show in a minute. One thing I did discontinue doing on the show, just because I thought it kind of dragged the show down, but made it a little cumbersome, is I do still tell the pay-per-view results if there was a pay-per-view that week and house show results. But I do not any longer go through the week-to-week TV shows. So if there's a big story, obviously that's on Raw or Nitro, it'll be covered. But not, just reading off the results of the shows, that just to me it just slowed things down. So as it's like it was meant for you to be on this episode, I do have 2 weeks worth of indie results this week.
Yes.
So there you go. Well, we'll start out. Oh, and I have to mention, as I always do, I have to give credit where credit is due. All the news and results that I pull for the show come from the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, which is my newsletter of choice. So
yes, fuck you, Dave, Uncle Dave.
Wait, I got to read you this comment from him today.
Yeah, no, I read about it. That Excalibur is the best announcer.
No, not that one. Oh. I was gonna put a post about this on our Facebook page earlier, and I completely forgot, but. Us talking about here's Dave. This is my thing about Dave. Listen how vague he is in this. From Wrestling Observer Radio. Punk should not be long before he returns. I mean, not this month, probably not August, but perhaps All Out, perhaps Full Gear. I think it'll be one of those shows when he's back. He said absolutely nothing right there. It's like, I don't know. He'll be back, I don't know, August, maybe next year. Right. Maybe he might be at Money in the Bank. I don't know.
Punk said 6 months, so that would put him at 6 months, if anything, if he came back in September.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's not like you gave us an update on anything there. Right. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
He's so full of shit.
I honestly feel that he is on somebody's payroll, so.
My thing about Dave is when it comes to actual news reporting 20 years ago, when he had an in with people like Jim Cornette and stuff where he could get information, he was a great reporter. I'm not taking that away from him. I just totally disagree with his opinions. I don't want his opinion on everything, But I mean, he used to be a great reporter.
How do you go from writing like you're a New York Times journalist to now being a journalist for one of those magazines that are sitting at the front of the checkout line at the supermarket? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything's gossip and innuendo. That by the time you get down to what the real story was, he was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like he's reporting that Paige might have signed with the WWE. Sasha Banks' moments from signing with them. We don't know if that's true or not unless it gets announced by AEW or someone close to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So why do all the bullshit if it's not worth it?
Yeah.
And then you get pissed when people say, hey, you're wrong. That's not what happened. And then you tell the fans off like you're a wrestler.
Well, and then sometimes he'll do the thing where what he says is going to happen doesn't happen. And then he just goes with that was originally the plan.
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
They changed it on me. I'm that smart that they had to change it from what I was reporting. What?
Yeah. He's so full of shit.
Oh.
Well, we'll go back here to 1997 and start the week off. We'll start the week off. It's the week of July the 19th, 1997. And we'll start the week off with we'll start off with WCW because they had a pay-per-view. July 13th, 1997, Daytona Beach, Florida. 7,851 in attendance for the Bash at the Beach.
I missed that pay-per-view.
And me too. And if WWE did it now, it wouldn't be the same.
No, because they wouldn't do it outdoors.
Yeah, well, that, and just like with Great American Bash, it's just slapping another name on one of their pay-per-views.
Right. I mean, I'll be honest. The couple of Clash of Champions that they did in the modern day weren't bad. They felt like Clash of the Champions. Mm-hmm. But then they just turned it into Night of Champions without the name. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was like, so.
In the opening contest, Wrath and Mortis with James Vandenberg beat Ernest the Cat Miller and Glacier when Mortis pinned Glacier at 9:45. We talked about this act on Aaron's podcast just recently, how, most of the guys involved are really talented. The whole thing's just pretty goofy.
I agree. But it was almost like WCW said, well, we invested this much money, so we're just going to have to see it through until we could find something better for them and we recoup some of that money we spent.
Right.
Because that lasted, I think that the Glacier character went on for a couple of years, but Wrath and Mortis had a good year-long run. And then Wrath disappeared for a little while before he came back as Brian Clark, and Mortis turned into Chris Kanyon with Raven. So
yeah, essentially the Wrath, before he got with Chronic, the last thing they did with him was they gave him a 25 win streak so that he could get beat by Kevin Nash.
Right, exactly.
Chris Jericho pinned Ultimo Dragon at 12:54 to capture the Cruiserweight title. Of course, they're going to have a great match.
Oh, yeah.
Gene Okerlund interviewed Raven and Stevie Richards at ringside. Okerlund said Raven, as far as he knows, isn't officially with WCW. Raven did respond to Okerlund with some memorized poetry. He addressed whether he would be Dallas Page's partner by giving a non-answer, psychobabble response. Okerlund called it gibberish. Richards interjected himself. He said to Raven, hey, tell him about the announcement tomorrow night. Raven then backhand slapped Richards, flooring him. I love these guys when they're first coming into WCW. So much fun.
I do too, but it's like...
But I'm a huge Raven mark too.
So. Of course. When he debuted in ECW, there was nothing better that ECW could have done. And him as a wrestler, it was, like you've said it before, it was a total reinvention of himself.
Mm-hmm.
But WCW almost made us relive the whole Stevie Raven saga in ECW, in that Raven was just beating the crap out of Stevie whenever he could in ECW, so he was doing it now in WCW.
Right.
And then Stevie just almost up and disappeared afterwards and went back to ECW like nothing ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So,
yes.
Rick
and Scott Steiner beat Masachono and Great Muta at 11:37. I remember that being a really good match.
Yeah, that was a banger. I can't lie.
Liz Mark, Hector Garza, and Juventud Guerrera beat Viano 4, La Parca, and Psychosis at 12:06 when Viano pinned Garza. Obviously, this is probably good, but didn't mean anything.
Just a lot of cruiserweights thrown in there. A car crash, yeah.
Yep. Chris Benoit pinned Kevin Sullivan at 13:20 in a retirement match. Those guys, to me, always had good matches against each other.
They did.
Jeff Jarrett pinned... Oh, go ahead.
It wasn't a recycled match. They always did something different in each one, so you knew you were getting something new, but they always delivered, too. Benoit, I think Sullivan brought out the best in Benoit, possibly.
Yeah. Jeff Jarrett pinned Steve McMichael at 6:54. Randy Savage and Scott Hall beat Diamond Dallas Page and Kurt Hennig when Savage pinned Page at 9:32. They didn't know for the longest time what they wanted to do with Kurt Hennig, and then they wound up figuring it out, but for a while there they didn't know. Roddy Piper beat Ric Flair with a sleeper, and then in the main event, and I know Aaron will dog him out, but I'm going to say this: I'll die on a hill here. Lex Luger and the Giant beat Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman when Hogan submitted to Luger's torture rack at 22:31. Dennis Rodman. Say what you want about him. I think he had a pretty good outing at this pay-per-view.
Him and Karl Malone took to wrestling very easily, considering they were two lanky guys who seemed like they could have been clumsier, but they weren't. And I think Luger and the Giant took care of him here. They made sure they didn't have him do anything too crazy, and also made sure that he was not injured or anything stupid. You know what I mean? And he was the perfect cohort for Hogan because at the time in basketball, Dennis Rodman was like the Hollywood Hogan. He was constantly changing his look. He was constantly doing something crazy. So it made sense for them to hang out and be friends.
And I never dug their vignettes together. I always thought they were kind of pompous and a little weird.
Right.
But like I said, as far as in ring, I didn't think Rodman did bad. You know, you could tell he was in there with pros, and like you said, he was in there with 3 pros that were walking him through it. You know,
right. But he looked good.
Yeah,
you know, he looked good for, considering we were at that cusp of here comes Jay Leno, here comes Karl Malone, here comes, this guy. It was like they were just an influx of celebrities who would never wrestle a day in their life. They were actually doing well. They weren't doing a plancha, but they were at least learning the moves that they had to do against each other.
So overall, just your memories, what you're thinking of it from memory. What do you think of this Bash at the Beach pay-per-view?
Solid pay-per-view, but I think I would have liked a better match in the main event. And not because Rodman did anything wrong, but I would have maybe liked a number 1 contenders match to set up the world title match that Luger was going to be getting. You know what I mean, down the line or something, because it just seemed like this tag match was for nothing. It was just the NWO is going to fight the 2 main WCW guys again. You know what I mean? Or maybe they could have switched the DDP Hennig versus Hall and Macho Man match, so this way the mystery partner could have been revealed as the main event.
Right.
So
I agree with you. I think it was a solid pay-per-view. And like most WCW pay-per-views in this era, the undercard was really good. And then the main events were a tad bit stinky. You know, I mean, that's just the way WCW presented its product at this time. You have a not so great main event as far as wrestling wise goes, but the people in the match are stars and they're going to draw the buy rate. And then they give you some good wrestling in the undercard to enjoy. So,
and I think honestly, they started trying to use that same maneuver on TV, in that we're going to put the cruiserweights on first, and we're going to have a William Regal versus like a Rey Mysterio match in the middle, and then our main event, which might not be even existent because we're going to promise them Hogan versus Luger, but then Hogan's going to do something, you know what I mean, to count it out, or match ain't even going to start, you know what I mean, and then we'll go to black. So fans started to catch up with that, like, okay, this is basically what TV is every week. We could take WCW and switch to WWF right now.
Yeah.
And then watch WCW.
Especially with WWF's product getting better and better week after week.
Exactly.
All right. So with the pay-per-view in the books, let's go to some. There are no WCW TV tapings this week, but let's see, we got some news here. Jackie may end up managing Harlem Heat now that Sherry has been released, and Jackie is without an on-air role now that Sullivan is retired from WCW rings. Don't they put Jackie with Harlem Heat for a bit?
Yes, they do. The one thing I will say, she was a perfect fit for them because they wanted that tougher edge again. You know, like they were going back to the streets, but I hated the way they unceremoniously fired Sherry. You know, because Booker just came out and was like, by the way, we got rid of Sister Sherry. Yeah. After all she did for them, 3 title runs, you know what I mean, being a great manager for them, I think they could have given Sherry a better send-off than they did, is all I'm saying. But Jackie was a decent manager for them, and then we all remember what went on during her time with them. She wanted to challenge Disco Inferno for the TV title, and, you know. Jackie always happened to her, though. She'd come every time, and they'd do something for her in one of the companies, and then she'd end up getting screwed over or something, and they'd have her fight a man, and then they wouldn't know what to do with her afterwards.
Yep, she kind of floundered,
Yeah. So.
Eric Bischoff told the Detroit News that Nitro will not expand to 3 hours beginning August 4th, even though that leaves 1 hour of Raw unopposed Monday nights. Bischoff told the Detroit News he does not believe Raw will be successful in the new time slot. Raw's ratings are down 16% from a year ago when the show was 1 hour and live only once per month. Bischoff said Raw will suffer in its new time slot because it goes head-to-head with Monday Night Football in the fall and many early local newscasts year-round. So, yeah, they don't expand yet, but they are going to expand to 3 hours when they start feeling threatened.
They are. Yes, they are. And as we know, the 3-hour time slot with modern product, and even back then was their downfall because who wants to watch 5 hours worth of wrestling a week? It was hard enough watching 4,
Yes.
but
Yes.
now 5, and
I
all you're doing for an hour out of that 3 that you have is, oh, here's the Nitro Girls. Here's another Ric Flair promo. Here's the NWO again.
I said it
You know
in
what I mean?
I said it in 1998, and I say it in 2022 for a television wrestling show, not a pay-per-view. For a television wrestling show, 3 hours is too long.
I agree.
Let's see here. Rob Van Dam was backstage at Nitro in Orlando. Orlando is his hometown, and since the WWF ECW deal is off for now, and because his big push began because of rumors that started when he was backstage at the Atlanta Nitro, he decided to make another backstage visit. That's not to say WCW isn't interested in him, though. Terry Funk was also backstage. Dory Funk Jr. was also backstage. WCW is going to be cracking down on the number of backstage passes given out. Too many wrestlers and employees have been bringing friends backstage at recent shows, making for a crowded scene. It was especially bad at Bash because everyone wanted to be around Rodman. RVD playing the game.
Yeah. He knew what he was doing, though. He was visiting the WCW. He was on Raw a couple times. He was hoping someone was going to write him a big check, but then ultimately he stayed with the ECW till the ending. So I don't even think it came down to money with him. I think Paul just promised him a bigger push, and to make him the focal point, which he did. It just he ended up getting injured around like 98, ending of 98, and stayed out for a year. So
the layoffs continue in WCW. I covered some last week, but for this week they had laid off Jerry Lynn, Colonel Robert Parker, Renegade, David Taylor, Pat Tanaka, the Amazing French Canadians, and Lanny Poffo, who surprisingly was collecting a check and never worked a match in WCW.
Right. That had to be a favor to like Macho Man, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I bet it was in his contract. Hire my brother.
Right. That had to be. No, the layoff. So I could see them getting rid of the Renegade and certain other guys, but Colonel Parker was actually pretty damn good. You know what I mean? And
that guy, that Robert Fuller is a master on the microphone.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And then, as we know, he ended up in WWF after that because
Tennessee Lee.
Jeff Jarrett needed a mouthpiece, which, in my opinion, the one thing that Jeff Jarrett had a redeeming quality in this point in his career was that he can cut a damn good promo. So I don't know why he needed a mouthpiece, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. Woman is also gone. She and Sullivan have broken up in real life. A couple of months back in Japan, they had a public fight in a hotel lobby that had people talking. So Nancy and Sullivan are broken up at this point. Nancy, woman, man, she's second to Sherry for me as the best woman in wrestling history.
I would put her as 1A and 1B. Her and Sherry always neck and neck. You know what I mean? In that, but that Sherry actually wrestled as well.
Right. Yes.
So she had that extra little quality there. But with woman, I mean, would there be a Sandman without woman?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Would there be a Doom without woman? Because she's the one that introduced them.
Yep.
And when the Horsemen were turning face in the late 80s, early 90s, she brought them back to their prominence as heels.
Sure did.
So, I mean, she's definitely one of the best.
So good. I literally I've never seen anything with woman where I said I didn't like that.
No. It was mind-boggling when she showed up with Hogan and Macho Man on Nitro for that first little bit. You know what I mean? But then that led to like the best promo line that the Sandman and Too Cold Scorpio ever delivered. When she left ECW, they're like, "Yeah, get in your limo and go manage Hulkamania. Go ahead, woman. Bye." And it was like, wow, they really just called her out on that shit.
Yeah, no shit.
But I didn't know. See, this is the funny thing about her, because I was not a big NWA fan when I was younger. I was introduced to WWF and then became a WCW fan during the Monday Night Wars and whatnot.
Right.
When I saw her in ECW, I had no idea about the woman in the NWA. You know what I mean? So, like, when I went back and watched old tapes, saw her with Doom, saw her approaching Ric Flair, like, Jesus Christ, this girl's been around since the 80s. What the hell?
Yeah.
You know?
Startling revelation.
Yeah. So,
let's see here. It appears Arn Anderson's in-ring days are over. He is helping Terry Taylor backstage. Sources say Taylor will not lose any power when Sullivan returns to WCW full-time. In fact, Sullivan will probably be working underneath Taylor, although few seem to know what Sullivan's duties will actually be. Sullivan used to browbeat Taylor backstage when Taylor worked underneath him, although there isn't a sense that Taylor holds a grudge that can't help Sullivan's future in WCW. More of the revolving door of bookers and etc. for WCW that always cause such chaos. The chaos, if you thought the shows were chaotic, folks, you should have been back in the locker room. Because half the time you don't know who's in charge. And yeah.
And here's the thing with Arn taking that backseat to wrestling now because of his arm and all the problems he had with his shoulder, you think he would have been the obvious choice as the head booker.
Yeah.
Because who better than Arn Anderson to know how to book wrestling in the same regard as Dusty Rhodes before him, Kevin Sullivan when he was sane, you know what I mean? And other great wrestling promoters putting a wrestler in charge. I'll be honest, I've never liked that much that Terry Taylor produced in wrestling. You know, whether he was with WWF, WCW, it didn't matter. It always fell flat.
Yeah, that, and he to me, he always seemed like that guy that was always around, but didn't seem to be doing much.
Right.
Like you always heard that he was, either working in the office in the WWF or in WCW, but he never seemed to be doing much,
Well, I watched a shoot interview with Jim Cornette about a year ago, and he talks about his time in TNA. And he's like, one of the only reasons I took the job is because Terry Taylor and Dutch Mantel were a part of the booking committee. So I said, those are my buddies. I know I could trust them.
Mm-hmm.
And then they bring Russo in, and that pissed him off. But he said, okay, for the betterment of wrestling, I'll stick around for Russo because I know I have Taylor and Dutch to back me up. So then him and Russo got into an argument or whatever. And Russo's like, look, let's not tell Dixie about this right away because if she hears we're arguing, it's going to hurt the company. And Jim was like, yeah, no problem. And the only other people in the room at the time were Dutch and Terry.
Mm-hmm.
So now, a week later, Dixie calls him into the office and she's like, I've been hearing that you and Vince have been arguing. Oh. And he's like, from who? I was like, well, I called Vince and he admitted to it. And he's like, okay, so Vince stooged me off. That's fine. I figured he would. And he's like, and we have another witness. He's like, well, it was either Dutch or Terry. So who was it? He's like, I'm not saying nothing.
Well, he knew it wasn't Dutch.
Right. So he goes back and he's waiting in his room or whatever. And here comes Terry Taylor. He's like, hey, Terry, did you talk to Dixie recently? No, I haven't talked to Dixie in like 3 weeks. He's like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I would never say anything about you, Jim. He's like, Terry, I didn't say you said anything about me. I just asked if you talked to her. He's like, all right, I had to tell her what happened. And after that, he said the relationship was doomed. Yeah. And he always just considered Terry Taylor the stooge.
Like, weasel.
It was. He always wondered who stooged him off in WCW, who stooged him off in WWF. He said all these years it was always Terry Taylor. It had to be.
And that's probably, that being a stooge is probably how he had such a long career and was always around and never doing anything.
Right. Exactly.
Well, that's it for WCW. We'll move on to the WWF now. And some of the bigger news there. On the July 14th Raw is War, Vince McMahon interviewed Shawn Michaels in mid-ring in his hometown of San Antonio, Texas. Michaels did his entire intro routine coming to the ring, not favoring his knee at all. Michaels said he's not 100%, but said that when he and Austin won the belts, neither were 100%. Thus, he said he was ready to fight. He said he would leave the decision up to Austin. He said he'd been sitting at home in his big new house in the hills lately and noticed my buddy and yours, Bret Hart, tell everybody if he did not win the WWF title at SummerSlam, he would never wrestle in the U.S. again. Michael said he's been waiting a long time to see Bret's ass get booed out of the country. He said he's not on SummerSlam, but said that was not his fault. And he turned to McMahon, and did they do their cheesy thing, and begged him to allow him to be part of SummerSlam. Michaels offered to sell souvenirs or set up the ring or sell tickets at the front door or shine McMahon's shoes if he would let him be there. McMahon really handed up for Michaels at that point. The crowd popped when Michaels said he believed Undertaker would run Bret out of the country, and he wanted to be there to see it in person. Michaels then danced to his music. Ross said Michaels would be part of SummerSlam in some shape or form. So you have the return of Shawn Michaels to Raw again, right, because this is pain in the ass Shawn Michaels in 97. Start, stop, because, you know, 1 week he's happy-go-lucky. The next week he's angry and pilled out of his head.
Right. Of course.
And and we know where this is going, which we'll get to in the weeks to come. Shawn's going to wind up being the special guest referee at SummerSlam in one of my favorite WWF title matches of all time, one of my favorite finishes of all time. But when I read this stuff from 97 about Shawn, and I am a huge Shawn Michaels fan, everybody knows that, as far as a performer goes, I am so glad that he got to have his second career.
Yes.
Because his legacy would really stink if it was done. If it was 98 and done, his legacy would stink.
Oh, without a doubt. He would have guys that would have been like, whenever they would have done those promos for, like, you know, his career, guys were like, yeah, I guess I like Shawn, but I mean, there was two of them, you know, because he was a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wonder if when he would leave WWF, the only reason he would come back is because he knew the WWF doctors would hand him a prescription where he could maybe get it in the outside world because, you know, he was labeled as a drug addict at the time. You know what I mean? So he knew they'd give him something and he could always pop back in, or, you know, it was like that was his pharmacy, you know?
Yes.
So, because he didn't wrestle from here until way after SummerSlam. He didn't get in the ring. I think Bad Blood was the next match that he was involved in.
And I know the other thing I'll say is, you look back on it now, and I know that Vince likes Shawn and liked Shawn. I get it. And I know that Vince was in a war with WCW and couldn't afford to lose talent. But at this time, let's be honest, Vince is enabling Shawn.
Yes.
You know, he is enabling him. He is not punishing him for his bad behavior.
Nope.
He's just placating to everything he wants. And that's not helping Shawn Michaels at this point. You know?
No. And it's similar to what AEW did with Jeff Hardy. Got fired by the WWE recently because of drug abuse, and they wanted to put him in rehab. He said no. AEW signed him, and he was on their television a week later and got hurt, looked bad, looked like he was in rough shape, and then got picked up for a DUI and because he had pills in him, and now he had to go to rehab. But AEW let him do all that for those first few months without ever saying, hey, Jeff, are you okay? Do you need anything? Do you need a month off? Do you need to clean up? Whatever, you know. It could have been avoided.
Yep,
you know what
absolutely.
I mean? So,
all speculation points to Undertaker's brother Kane, and Wade spells it Cain here, being played by Glenn Jacobs, currently wrestling in the USWA as Doomsday, aka Diesel, and Isaac Yankem. And of course, that's going to come to fruition. Sid is doubtful for his SummerSlam match against Vader due to the sciatic nerve problems. Softball. He was brought to Raw mainly to add some star power to get the opening few minutes of the show.
And that would have been a good match. Vader versus Sid might have been a good match.
Mm-hmm. They had a decent match. What pay-per-view was it? It's Time.
Yeah,
I think.
But I think at this point in Sid's career, he was only interested in being in the main event if they'd allow him to. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like he main evented Royal Rumble and the pay-per-view before Royal Rumble with Shawn, and he was headlining. Then he did WrestleMania with Taker. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But after that, when they were telling, okay, you're going to be in a 6-man tag with Ahmed Johnson and Warrior, or Ahmed and Shawn, or you're going to battle Camp Cornette, he really wasn't caring about it. So he was like,
right.
I'll play softball, I'll get injured, whatever, and they won't care. They'll pay me until they're ready to fire me. You know?
Yeah. And that was his deal, man. That was especially in this era, from 95 to when WCW closed. He was real flaky.
But he wasn't as flaky in WCW when he went back to it because he was battling Nash for the title. He was always involved in a major feud with Goldberg, or Scott Steiner. So
Right.
WCW gave him the main event push he thought he deserved, which he did. Look, I'm not going to shit on Sid Vicious. Sid was a very good big man.
Yes.
But then you're looking at the stupid decisions they made with Vince Russo at the helm with him. Hey, jump off the second rope. Yeah, I got it. And then boom, done.
Yep.
You know. So
and again, he's one of those guys you can say what you want about him, bell to bell, whatever. When he was in that ring and he was in that with that, he was always fucking over too. Always over. People loved Sid.
He was slowly getting over in the late '80s too as a Horseman member, which is
when
he challenged Sting for the title. You know,
when he was Skyscrapers with Dan Spivey.
Yeah,
the crowds always pop for him. When Dan Spivey would be wrestling, the crowd would be chanting, "We want Sid." They just wanted to watch Sid. They didn't give a shit about Dan Spivey.
Right. So
this next thing is very, very interesting considering what's going on in the news right now. The August edition of Icon magazine has a 6-page feature on Vince McMahon. It's worth picking up at the newsstand. He talked about not being as close to his father growing up as he wished and his estranged relationship with his mother, who has married 5 times. It chronicles his relationship with his wife, Linda McMahon. Said McMahon, when you're around a show business type environment, around beautiful people, most of whom you've created, it's pretty easy to fall into, on occasion at least, a very loose morality. That doesn't help business and it doesn't help your family life, that's for sure. Women, and to a certain extent, drugs, whatever the drug of choice was for beautiful people. Linda said whatever hurt she has endured is probably not as much as he has felt looking back on it. That's all very interesting considering all the news that's going on right now.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I was like, wow, 25 years later, here we are.
Yep. But see, here's the thing of it though. I talked about this on If You Smell What the Art Is Cooking. In the late '90s, during the Attitude Era, everybody thought that the Vince McMahon character was cool.
Yeah.
Everybody was cheering for it or booing it. They were giving it the right reaction that it needed. You know, the whole Trish Stratus thing, making her bark like a dog. The whole Sable thing with battling Stephanie and Sable being his mistress. You know what I mean? That was all cool. Fast forward 20 years later, and he's horrible. Well, that was his character.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't playing Bernie McMahon. He was playing Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon, yes.
You know what I mean? So there was no difference between the Mr. McMahon character and the Vince McMahon.
It's like they always say the best wrestler characters are just you with your volume turned up to 10.
Right. You know, you look at him when he delivers the Brett screwed Brett promo. That was him to a T. His ego was on his shoulder, and he was preaching that he wanted to keep Brett around, and he hopes there's still a relationship that one day Brett will come back, but that they couldn't afford to pay him, and that Brett didn't want to do business. Now, yes, Brett was wrong for not wanting to do business, but after 20 years of the Harts and the McMahons doing business with each other, you think he would have trusted Brett to say, "Here's your belt back.
Here's your belt." Yes.
I'm sorry for us not being able to make a deal, but maybe in time I will come back.
Right. Yes.
You know what I mean? So
and we're going to talk about it later in the year, obviously, when we get to November. But when we get to that, because I definitely want to have when we get to the screw job, and I know tons of podcasts have done episodes on it and stuff. But when we get to it, and I've got all the details here to break down from the dirt sheet, I think it'll be really cool to have maybe 2 or 3 of us discussing it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I have a lot of opinions on that situation.
Oh, I do too. And I'll be honest, and I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I think slightly Brett knew what was going to happen, but he didn't think Vince had the balls to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And then Vince had to show him, no, I do. It's my company. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. You know what I mean? So I don't think that Brett was fully in on it, but they probably told him, you know, we're getting the belt off of you whether you want it or not, Brett.
Well, I won't get in the weeds too much about it, but what I will say is this. One of my opinions is the whole thing could have been avoided because Bret Hart was willing to drop the title to anyone but Shawn Michaels.
Right.
You could have had Bret 2 weeks before Survivor Series, at a house show, the week
Right.
before Survivor Series on Raw, drop the title to, say, Undertaker or Ken Shamrock. And that
Or
would
Vader.
not, that yes,
To
that would
anybody.
not, people still would have paid to see Shawn versus Brett, whether it was for the title or not.
Without right, they could have made it a retirement match or a loser leaves town match or whatever they wanted to do. It didn't have to be for the title. You know what I mean? And I think
Yes.
Brett even talks about that he said he'd lose it the following night on Raw.
Oh, yeah.
But the stupidity of it is it was Vince McMahon's ego that got in the way. Because I'll be honest, I don't blame Shawn. I don't blame Triple H because he says he came up with the idea. I don't blame Russo, Cornette, or anybody else involved. It was all Vince. You know what I mean? Because if you look at it, he didn't just lose Bret Hart because of that. He lost Davey Boy. He lost Jim Neidhart. And Rick Rude left the company too because of it, because he was so pissed at the way they handled the Bret Hart situation.
He almost
lost
Mick Foley. Yeah.
Right. You know, and The Undertaker almost took Shawn's head off after that. Because when it came to light that Shawn knew, it was like, well, you're going to do this to everybody? You know? So...
The rest of this is kind of interesting. The rest of this is kind of interesting 25 years later, considering what's going on as well. Let's see. Regarding the steroid trial, McMahon said, pleading guilty to a bunch of sons of bitches who tried to ruin my life so I can hang on to the business. No, screw the business if that was the call. McMahon said he plans to run the WWF until he's so senile he has to turn the reins over to his kids.
I think we're there.
Yeah, I think we're there. Regarding Eric Bischoff, McMahon said, my competition is not some flavor of the month running the Turner organization. It just happens to be this kid Bischoff at the moment. My competition is the guy who's holding the money. And Vince always took that position. He always said, I don't care who's in charge of WCW. My enemy is Ted Turner. He didn't care about who was running the show.
Right. Because he used to mention Ted Turner on TV all the time.
Yep, he never mentioned Eric Bischoff.
Nope. Not once, but Bischoff took every moment he could to mention Vince.
Yeah. Even challenging him to come to Slamboree and fight him.
Right.
Let's see. Last note here on this section. The WWF was more impressed with Taka Michinoku than Great Sasuke and has signed Taka to a full-time 1-year deal. Because of the behind-the-scenes politics, Sasuke's tenure in the WWF is in jeopardy. I don't think he ever wrestled there again.
He was supposedly a headache. I get it. He was over in Mexico, and he was like a number one, trending guy. But it was like, look, we need you guys to come in and have no ego right now, and just do what we need you to do, because they were looking for their outlet. Like the WCW had the cruiserweight guys, so we need our own light heavyweights.
Right.
And Sasuke was like, no, I'm bigger than this, and it was like, okay, well.
And then Taka did.
Going with Taka.
Yeah, well, and Taka did better than him, so fuck you, go away. We'll just take Taka.
Well, here's the thing too. If you look at the matches that they had, I think they had 3 total. They had 1 on pay-per-view and 2 on Monday Night Raw. Taka was the star of those matches.
Absolutely.
He wasn't botching. He was doing crazy high-risk maneuvers, and he was getting the fans behind him. Where on the other hand, Sasuke was falling all over and pissed off at the crowd for not cheering for him, and playing hardball in the ring. They had like 8 false finishes in their pay-per-view match because Sasuke refused to lose. You know what I mean? So, come on. What are we going to do with you?
WWF on the road. We have one house show to report this week. July 11th in Dallas, Texas at the Reunion Arena. Bob Holly pinned Leif Cassidy. The Godwins beat the Headbangers. Rockabilly beat Flash Funk. Brian Pillman beat Jesse James with his feet on the ropes. The DOA beat the Blackjacks. God, Goldust beat Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Jesus Christ. I swear to God, they wrestled each other every single week in 1997.
Yep. Longest feud ever.
Yeah, seriously, or at least it feels like it. Ken Shamrock beat the British Bulldog via disqualification when Pillman interfered. Steve Austin and Mankind beat Brett and Owen. That'd be a good match.
Oh, definitely.
Let's see. And then The Undertaker beat Vader to retain the WWF title in a casket match. So that was the show in Dallas.
This is when they weren't quite sure if Vader was a face or a heel at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and they had
One,
started, if you remember, they had started working and I reported a few weeks ago, they had started working a feud, trying to work a feud between Taker and Ahmed.
right,
And then Ahmed got injured because Ahmed was actually supposed to be Taker's challenger at Canadian Stampede.
right,
But then
exactly,
they just went with Vader in a quick fix. You know, he's got
right,
nothing else going on. We'll just go with Vader.
right. But then their answer to that when they brought Ahmed back was now he's a crazy race card throwing guy. Because
Yeah.
everything was, you did this because I'm a black man. I'm going to join the nation domination. Wait a minute. You got injured. We talked about it on TV. You know, not like they just
Right.
wrote him off TV.
Right.
It was Ahmed got injured, and his replacement is Vader. Okay,
Yeah.
no big deal. You know.
Yeah. He. I don't know. We've talked about it on other shows before. I thought that he had potential when he first came in. He was really over.
Yeah,
And he was his own worst enemy. He got in his own way.
definitely, definitely. Too much, too soon with a lot of young wrestlers
Mm-hmm.
in the late '90s. They all thought they were God's gift, and
Yeah.
Vince McMahon turned around and showed them, no, you're just a guy I brought in, and if I don't like you, I'm going to throw you away, and then you're going to end up in WCW 2 years from now overweight.
Yeah.
You know.
So that was it for the WWF. Now we'll move on to ECW. Not a lot to report, but with ECW, even when there's not a lot to report, it's always a fucking train wreck.
Oh yeah.
In July 12th in Allentown, Pennsylvania, 2 incidents took place between fans and wrestlers. The first came during Rob Van Dam's match. A fan squirted water in his face from a sports bottle. Van Dam got upset, jumped the railing, and grabbed the fan. He called for security to kick the guy out of the building. Van Dam then yanked on the fan's shirt, ripping it, and told security it's the guy with the torn shirt. ECW was very upset at the local security guards hired for the show. Didn't intervene when Van Dam first called for their assistance. Apparently, the security guards thought it was part of the show at first, which, I mean, I can see that.
Yeah.
It's wrestling
really.
and it's ECW.
Right. You don't know if they've got a plant in the middle of the arena somewhere to, you know, a wrestler coming in or something. They don't tell you ahead of time.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
You're not smartened up. The second incident was more serious. During the main event match between Shane Douglas and Taz, Douglas got into a confrontation with several fans who were seated next to the guardrail. Either Francine was grabbed and Douglas was defending her, or a fan hit Douglas pretty hard, either inadvertently or on purpose. In any case, when Douglas reacted to getting hit, several fans moved toward him. Eventually, one of the fans began giving Douglas axe handles to the back. At this point, someone shouted to the locker room that fans were attacking Douglas. Perry Saturn on crutches was the first on the scene, and several other wrestlers followed, including the Dudleys and Louis Spicolli. It turned into quite a scene with several wrestlers and fans hitting and kicking each other, while security was again slow in responding. Of the fans involved in the incident, one was ejected from the building and another left on his own. ECW considered and may still be considering pressing charges against the fan.
And what state was this in again?
It's Allentown, Pennsylvania.
I didn't know that many rough people lived in Allentown, Pennsylvania at that time. I thought it was a nice, quiet little country town.
I guess not. You know, Pennsylvania and Chicago, anywhere in Pennsylvania and Chicago,
Yeah,
roughest fans in the world.
If you would have told me Pittsburgh, Philly, New York, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, oh, yeah, then it's understandable. But damn.
Allentown. The Pit Bulls wrestled over the weekend despite their arrest on drug charges. It looks as if they will be remaining in ECW, although perhaps with a decreased push. I reported it last week. The previous week, they got arrested for possession and dealing and all kind of shit, the Pit Bulls.
Yeah, with steroids, wasn't it?
And amongst other things, yes.
Right, yeah.
ECW.
They had potential to be big guys. You know what I mean? I think they made it to WWE TV a couple of times. But they like you said about Ahmed, same with them. They were their own worst enemy. So
that can be said for probably 75% of the ECW locker room.
Oh yeah.
Louis Spicolli blew his Louis Spicolli blew his temper backstage in Asbury Park, unhappy with something that happened that night, accusing ECW of fucking with him. Apparently, it stemmed from management scolding him for his use of the house mic during his match against Pritchard. Louis was also a guy that was gone too soon, but I mean, his own worst enemy. You know?
Um, when he was a enhancement talent in the WWF, obviously he was floundering, and they would use him to put over the bigger names. Fine. He got the ECW, and he did what he did. His feud with Tommy was great.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I used to love when he would come out mimicking Tommy Dreamer in the outfit and everything like that. But then he went to WCW, and it was like, okay, why is he here? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he became Scott Hall's lackey and almost a member of the NWO, but not really. And then he just died.
Yeah,
You know
I mean, you
Like,
can, and that probably I'd say like mid to late 96 until he passes. I think he passes in late 97 or early 98. I
yeah.
can't remember exactly. But you can just progressively, you just look at him and tell how unhealthy he is.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
He looked healthier as Radford.
Yes.
And he wasn't supposed to look healthy.
I just watched the WWF Superstars from 93, and he's a young, fresh-faced little jobber. He looks like a young, up-and-coming, promising talent.
And that yellow singlet, and he's like, okay, but God bless him. He tried in ECW, he was doing great, and then I just don't know why. I understand the payday WCW probably offered him, but I think he was better off in Paul's hands in ECW than he was in Eric's.
Mm-hmm.
And especially hanging out with Scott Hall. Again, love Scott Hall,
right.
But the drugs and alcohol that were falling off that guy were enough to get anybody drunk. You know what I mean? So
absolutely. Last item for ECW. The ECW WWF relationship is dead for now. Neither side trusts the other at all, although the divisiveness isn't so great that they wouldn't reestablish a working relationship at any time. Odds for an ECW presence at SummerSlam, less than 20%. And then we all know that the working relationship as far as them being on WWF TV is over.
Right.
But there was always a relationship. It's come to, we've come to find out over the years, there was always some sort of relationship between Vince and Paul.
Yeah.
Vince was funneling money into that company. He knew that it was better to have an ECW and a WWF against WCW.
Well, I mean, look, Paul could say, oh, Vince never paid our bills one time or gave me any money to keep the company afloat. But we all knew something was going on there. And on top of that, Vince looked at that as his own developmental without it being labeled as one.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Except if WCW got a hold of them first, well, then he was kind of up a creek, like with guys with Saturn and Raven and, Malenko, Benoit. But he still got a pretty good amount of talent from them. You know what I mean? So, my thing with it is that Paul Heyman has such a great mind for wrestling. And we know that till this day, he's still booking great wrestling. But he doesn't know what to do with money. God bless him.
God bless him.
He's the worst money handler there'll ever be, because I think there's guys that are still owed money from ECW. Last I heard from Shane Douglas was like 6 months ago. He said something in a shoot interview that Paul still owes him a $7,500 check that bounced. So,
not surprising at all. Chad Austin always describes the fact that he would call the house. He would call Paul's house and get the mystery house guest. Hello?
Yeah.
Paulie? No, it's not Paulie.
My favorite Paul Heyman story, Bully Ray told him during an ECW roundtable discussion they had on the network. And Bully is supposed to get tickets. He's in like upstate New York, and Paul's in Philly. Bully calls him, Paul, you have to FedEx the tickets so I could sell them to the promoter so that he could book the venue. If we don't have the paper tickets, he can't sell anything.
Right.
Paul's like, yeah, I'll go to FedEx today, no problem. So he calls him the next day. He's like, okay, do you have the tracking number so we can wait for the package? He's like, yeah, and he rolls off like X, Y, 20, 14, this, that, and he gives it, and then Bully's like, Paul, that's too many numbers. He's like, well, then take off the last one. And Bully's like, you motherfucker, how could you? You didn't even go yet. He's like, I've been busy. He's like, busy doing what? I'm the one here doing all the promo shit.
What I love that. Then take a number off.
Take a number off. It'll be fine. Like, you didn't even go yet.
Oh, Lordy. That's great. Give me like 2 minutes. I gotta pee. Be right back.
Go ahead.
All right, I'm back.
And we're back.
And I was right. 2 minutes. Called it. All right. Let me write that down. And that is it for ECW. And now it's Archie's main event. Archie's favorite part of the show.
That's right.
I'm actually going to crack a frosty beverage here.
There you go.
And we'll go into 2 weeks here of indie results on the
Yes.
Slice of Time podcast. This is always fun to see these ridiculous names, and
right.
It's also fun to follow along with these indie shows because you're like, oh, I remember these guys are feuding now. Like I know now, you know.
Right. Yep. Yep.
The week of June 29th to July the 5th, Mideastern Wrestling Federation, June 29th in Baltimore, Maryland at Teamsters Hall. There's some connected guys at Teamsters Hall.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Adam Flash pinned Shark Attack Kid.
Does he come out with a bite missing out of him?
The wrestler formerly known as Earl the Pearl beat Salvatore Sincere.
That's too long of a name. Like, you imagine, those little things that when they flash the wrestler's name on TV?
Yeah.
You need like 4 of them.
Yeah. or it would say on the Krylon, it would say TWFKETP. Yeah.
Right. Would still be too long.
Oh, I love one of these names. This name is great. Okay, so Lucifer and his partner Knuckles, Zanwich, Knuckles Zanwich.
Knuckles Zanwich.
Beat Chad Austin's friend Bob Starr and Joe Thunder.
Now, you have a character who's obviously demonic enough and strong looking enough to put his name Lucifer, but your thought is to team him with Knuckles Zanwich. What a bad way to promote that guy.
Oh man. The Dark Side Demons with their manager Hunter Q Robbins. God, 97 and Hunter Q is still around. Beat Mad Dog O'Malley and Joey Matthews. I like Joey Matthews.
Yeah, I do too. Joey Matthews. Christian York, when he was teaming with him, was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Great tag team. But look at the difference. The Dark Side Demons, shouldn't they have been managed by Lucifer?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But we're not allowed to make any sense. This is indie wrestling.
Right, exactly.
Quinn Nash beat Ace Darling to retain the Mid-Atlantic title.
I remember Quinn Nash. He was all over the Eastern Seaboard back in the 90s.
As was Ace Darling, yeah.
Yes.
Jason Knight with Dawn Marie beat Blue Meanie.
Damn.
Wild Bill, subbing for Chris Candido, beat Balls Mahoney via forfeit when the commissioner stopped the match due to balls bleeding. Whatever, mercy.
Damn.
Wise guy Jimmy Cicero. I remember Jimmy Cicero.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve Carino beat Mark Shader and Devin Storm.
Isn't it odd that wise guy Jimmy Cicero was wrestling at the Teamsters Hall?
Yeah. Huh. Go figure.
Right.
And Salvatore Sincere, defending the MEWF title for the absent Disco Inferno, pinned the man formerly known as Earl the Pearl to retain the title.
So wait, they fought twice in one night?
Yes.
And the second one was for a title that Salvatore Sincere didn't even have.
Didn't even own, yeah.
Jeez.
Probably because at one point Disco was gone from WCW, so he was probably wrestling in this independent league, and now he's going back to WCW, so he's like, fuck you guys.
Right. Put Tom Brandi in my role.
Yeah, can't even show up to defend your title and lose it.
So I'm assuming then that the earlier match was maybe a number 1 contenders match?
Yeah, I don't know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
would assume so.
I was like, this again? What the fuck? Want my $8 back that I paid for admission.
Insane Championship Wrestling, June 29th in Lincoln Park, Michigan.
Nice, okay.
Gaza Kalman beat Big Daddy Adams.
Okay.
Every indie wrestling promotion at some points has a Big Daddy something.
Yep.
Larry Destiny fought Professor Maxwell to a draw.
Okay.
It's indie, so I don't know if it's the same guy or not, but Lucifer beat Magic. Not Majewski.
No, he goes by Warsaw.
Ghetto Blaster beat Tower of Doom. I can't tell if those are tag teams or actual singles wrestlers.
But see, now I'm imagining if it's just one wrestler, Tower of Doom better be like 7'1" and 350 pounds.
Right.
Yeah. If it's a 5'6" guy who weighs like 220, it's like, no, you're not a Tower of Doom. I'm sorry.
El Perro fought American Kickboxer. That's a stupid name.
I remember that name. I remember it in PWI in the back everywhere.
American Kickboxer.
You know he wanted to be Jean-Claude Van Damme, but
I'm sure he had the look going.
Yeah.
They went to a no contest. Steve Nixon beat Jimmy V in an I Quit match.
Okay.
Dirty Tex and Psycho Rick beat the Cold Brothers. They're cold.
The Cold Brothers.
If Aaron was here, he would say that Dirty Tex sounds like something you do to a lady or something.
Right.
That would be his shtick.
Now, if his name was Dirty Tex and the other guy's name was Psycho what? Psycho Mike?
Psycho Rick.
Psycho Rick. You put them together and you get the Psycho Tex. When jealousy gets too off the wall, you send a Psycho Tex.
In 97, you're kind of ahead of your time at this point.
Right. You couldn't text on a brick phone.
Oh, man, those fucking things. How much? I got to call you after 9. Call you after 9.
Yeah. Call them back at night. I'm sleeping.
I've only got like 7 minutes on my time card here.
Right. I have free nights and weekends, please.
Yes. I can't talk to you Monday through Friday from fucking 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. We cannot talk.
Right. And I think that at 4 a.m. you were cut off. You were done. If you stayed on the phone, like I can only imagine, like if you were on the phone until like 4:30 and you ate into that normal time, you were probably pissed off when you got your bill.
I tried to explain T9 to my kids one time.
Oh, that's impossible.
And they're just like, how, what? How did you even? Yeah. And I was like, yeah. And I was really fast at it too.
Yep.
Like your thumbs learned how many times to press to get that certain letter.
Right.
Bull Payne beat Ian Rotten. I bet that was Rotten.
Yeah.
Joey Legend fought Samu of the Samoan Gangstas to a no contest.
I always find it incredibly crazy that was Edge's first tag team partner, Joey Legend.
Yeah, and he was just Joe for a minute in WWF, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I kind of liked his gimmick, actually, like going around the locker room stirring up shit.
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of neat. Like, I don't know.
Who is that guy? Oh, that's just Joe.
It's just Joe. And then the Cold Brothers won an insane battle royal to end the show. It was an insane battle royal.
Now, I imagine them playing Cypress Hill Insane in them and Braden during the whole match. And the way you win the last two guys, you have to put your opponent in a straitjacket. that would be like a killer match. You know what I mean? Like the insane battle royal. You know what I mean? Probably just a bunch of weapons being thrown into the ring and.
Yeah, or nothing. Just the promotion's called Insane Championship Wrestling, so they just called it an Insane Battle Royal.
It's an insane battle royal. What's insane about it? Nothing.
The lack of talent in it. That's what's insane about it.
You couldn't book Salvatore Sincere. He worked twice in Baltimore last night.
Sincerely. And the last show that we're going to talk about was apparently the debut show for this promotion.
Oh.
The North States Wrestling Alliance, July 11th in Westland, Michigan. at the Wayne Ford Civic League. And I don't think this probably wasn't the show that I saw. Let me look here. No, I just remember Westland is, I don't know, it's a couple hour drive from Toledo. And I remember going up there and going to this Wayne Ford Civic League with a buddy and seeing an indie wrestling show, probably in 97, but it wasn't this show. I was just like, oh, that'd be cool if it was the show that I was actually at, but it wasn't. 300 in attendance, not too bad for a debut show for an indie promotion. KC Thunder beat Elvis Elliott.
I remember the name KC Thunder.
All Natural Briar Wellington with Chad Casey beat El Rojo Diablo.
So the Red Devil.
The Red Devil.
I like it.
All Natural Briar Wellington.
The name doesn't match the nickname. Like All Natural. I like Butch Reed, the natural Butch Reed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you expect this All Natural for his name to be like white sounding in a way. You know what I mean? But then it'd be Briar Wellington. And
Briar Wellington.
You're an English gentleman? I don't understand.
Why don't you just go as the English gentleman, Briar Wellington?
Right.
Jimmy V fought Calvera Cortez to a time limit draw.
Calvera Cortez. Sounds like a woman.
Yeah. Bobby, it sounds like a name that WWE would give somebody in NXT.
Yeah.
One of their shitty NXT names.
And then they would shorten it to just Cortez by the time they got to the main roster.
You know what's funny about that? I was thinking the other day, I am a fan of Austin Theory.
Right.
And I am actually a fan of Matt Riddle. I like Matt Riddle.
Right.
But here's what's stupid about WWE. Archie and I were talking about this earlier on our We Can't Wrestle podcast Facebook page. If you're not a member, join. The WWE has great athletes. My opinion, they have the best. They have the best roster in North American wrestling. Definitely. They just book. They write stupid.
Right.
And their pay-per-view cards are always great because the wrestlers are fantastic. So on a show where that's the thing, is on a show where it's about the story, it's garbage. On a show where it's about the wrestling, which is a pay-per-view, it's great.
Right.
But what I was thinking about earlier was because of WWE's stupid decisions to take people's first names away, which is it's just ridiculous.
No sense, right.
At some point in maybe 4 or 5 years from now, the main event of WrestleMania is going to be Theory versus Riddle.
Right.
You know? Right. Oh, boy. Like, when I think Austin Theory versus Matt Riddle, that's going to be a great. Yeah. Right. But it's Theory versus Riddle. And that's your WrestleMania main event. And I'm not saying the wrestlers. I'm saying the name. The names. Right. It sounds silly.
Exactly. And here's the other thing of it. They've seen how well taking somebody's first name has worked for so many other wrestlers like Cesaro and, Big E, which, Big E got a push recently, but it took him how long to finally get to a world title status?
Right.
You know what I mean? You fans need to connect with somebody with their whole name.
Right, exactly.
It can't just be, oh, look, I like Theory. What theory do you like? What are you talking about? Austin Theory?
Yeah.
Oh, him.
Yeah. I have a theory. I still say Austin Theory, and I still say Matt Riddle because I don't know. I just that would have been like in 1997 just changing in 1997 in 2002 just changing John Cena's name to just Cena.
Cena, right. Right. That would have been a total and utter breakdown. Or Randy Orton to just be RKO.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But see, the thing that's ruining it as well, though, is like I make a joke on the week if you smell what the art is cooking about Walter because they changed his name to Gunther.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've been a Walter fan since he's been in the UK and seeing him on the independent scene. He is a monster. That chop is devastating. There hasn't been a chop that devastating since Chris Benoit.
Yeah.
But you change his name to Gunther. That's fine and well. But I refuse to call him anything else but Walter. Because that's what I've known him as for the last 10 years. You know what I mean? You change that. I get it. You want to own the rights to the name. But how about pay the person to own their name then?
Right.
If
Yeah.
you offer Nate, if I told you right now I want to own the name Nate Maxon, and you said no, you're crazy, that'll ever. And I was to say something like, I'll offer you $5 million for it, and any royalties that come from it, you can take a percentage of it. You wouldn't jump all over it?
Yeah, I would. I'd be like, fine. And then when you fire me, I'll just change my name to my middle name. I'll be David Maxon.
Or
Yeah.
you'll offer me or I'll offer you the right to own your name again, like they've
Right.
done with other wrestlers. You know what I mean? It's that simple. You could buy your name back. Okay, well, I paid you for it. You got all those royalties off of it. Here, give me back my $5 million. You got your name again.
Right.
But they're doing this to so many times. Like, okay, he was Matt Riddle in the UFC. Now he's just Riddle in the WWE. Well, but we still know him as Matt Riddle.
Yeah. No, you're not. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not like you're fucking fooling anybody,
right?
I don't know. It's stupid, and I understand that they change people's names when they come in, like when they go to NXT. Because like you said, they want to own the name, and I totally understand that. If you bring somebody in and you give them a name, that's fine.
That's fine.
But if you bring them in, they have a name, and then halfway through their career you change it, that's stupid.
Right. Exactly. Like with Walter, they brought him in NXT UK and in NXT for the first few months as Walter. Why all of a sudden, midway, you made this guy who can barely speak English now cut a promo going, I no longer want to be known as Walter. Yeah. I want to be known as Gunther.
Like any one of us old school fans ever says, man, I love the greatness and the humor and just I love Colonel Mustafa. No, we say the Iron Sheik.
Right. Exactly. When he came in as the Iron Sheik, as Colonel Mustafa, I remember going, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Like, he was, I understand he was from Iran as the Iron Sheik, but he could have still been the Iron Sheik because you've got an American being an Iraqi sympathizer.
Right.
So what's the difference if he's from Iran? You know what I mean?
Or you could even just even at that point, if you wanted to make a big deal about it, because it was like he was from Iran, and Iran and Iraq hate each other, and now he's sided with Iraq. He could have called himself the Iraqi Sheik, for a little bit or whatever.
Or he came in as one of Sergeant Slaughter's soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
Why not have him run in as the Iron Sheik, and then the following week, Sergeant Slaughter names him Colonel Mustafa, but you just gave him the name. Like, you ain't gonna remember the Iron Sheik.
Nobody's gonna remember. Yeah,
like really,
The next match on this card, Pitbull Bobby Clancy beat Iron Dog. At least they kind of fit the Pitbull.
That should have been a dog collar match.
Total Annihilation beat Machine Gun Mike Kelly. Machine Gun Kelly, what? And Outlaw Bobby Lee.
Okay.
Let's see here. The Heartbreakers, which is Otis Apollo and Johnny Paradise, beat Rico Rodriguez and Larry Destiny.
Okay.
Beautiful Brian Fury, managed by the producer. That guy is your this guy. That guy is your standard indies or 90s indie wrestling manager. He's got like a beret.
Yep.
He's got the sunglasses. Yep. He's got the boa. He's got the boa around his neck. The big feathery boa and like a loud suit.
And he brings that producer's chair with his name on the producer on the back of it. He puts it right in the ringside.
And he comes out to Everybody Wants You. But anyway, 90s indie wrestling.
Yep.
Tommy Loco, managed by Johnny Diamond, beat Jose Perez.
Okay.
Blood and Guts, managed by the Gypsy, beat the Death Dealer, Tommy Starr, and the Nighthawk.
Jesus, those are some powerful names.
Alexis Machine, which sounds like a girl, but it's not.
Yeah.
With the producer, beat Skull Gans to win the NSWA title. And that was your main event, apparently.
Not terrible. Couple of funny names there.
Yes. I was glad, though. I was like, there's not a lot of indie results, but at least since Archie's going to be here, there's some indie results.
There's some, right.
Yes. But that is going to be it for this week's edition of Slice of Time. Archie, I want to thank you for joining me this week. I appreciate it. It's always a great time.
Thank you for having me.
And that being said, unless there's anything you want to discuss.
I would just like to ask the listeners, because I added NWA Power this week instead of doing AEW Rampage to the show. Give us some feedback on the We Can't Wrestle podcast page. Let me know if you guys are liking that the NWA has been put in, and that there's now 3 separate promotions being talked about. Let me know if you guys want to hear about Impact or any of the other promotions that we've talked about in the past, and just give me some feedback on where you'd like the show to go.
Awesome. And speaking of the network, little announcement here. I haven't said anything because I was waiting. So by the time this airs, it'll be tomorrow when this comes out. But I was waiting. Whenever I set up a server for one of the podcasts, it takes a few days for all the podcast apps to have it.
Right.
For everything to where so people can find the podcast anywhere they want to, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So I usually make the thing and then wait a few days before I announce it. But we recorded the other night, or they recorded the other night. I was present, but it is finally going to happen this week. This show will be out on Tuesday. So yes, tomorrow, Wednesday, more than likely, the premiere edition of the Golden Voices podcast with David Gold and Cheyenne Ortiz. So
there was a lot of promoting for that. We were a lot of talking about it, and I can't wait to hear what David and Cheyenne had to talk about.
It is good. It's a great show. They definitely have lots of great discussion about WrestleBash coming up on August 20th.
Awesome.
And a lot more on the show. So stay tuned for that. If you're listening to this, that should be out, like I said, should be out sometime tomorrow, being Wednesday, the 20th. And other than that, again, like I said, thank you, Archie, for joining me this week. And everybody, I and whoever's joining me, or me alone, whatever, next week, we will see you next week, 25 years ago.